Caylin Frank.
Yes.
Welcome to the John Riley Project.
Thank you for having me.
So we saw each other last night.
Yes, we did.
At the Green Valley Civic Association Poway Chamber of Commerce Candidate Forum at Painted Rock Elementary. So you're a candidate for the at-large position.
Yes.
For Poway City Council, a sitting council member right now. Mm-hmm. And how you doing?
I'm good. Feeling a little relieved that last night's over.
Right.
That was certainly, I've never done anything quite like that. So I had some nerves, had some jitters, but glad that it went well. I feel like I got some good feedback, which is always nice to hear. And now just continuing to move on for the next 4.5 weeks or so.
Right. You got a little, not that anyone's counting.
Yeah, right.
But I think if you didn't have jitters, that would be worse. Because it's
right.
Because even veterans, whether they're politicians or athletes or, whatever, where they've got to get up in front of a crowd, it's natural they're going to be jittery.
And there was a good turnout.
Oh yeah,
I was really happy to see that. I mean, Poway is a very engaged city overall, I think, but it's always nice to just have that. We're in a school auditorium, very city oriented, and it was nice to see people out there. Saw a lot of friendly faces, which is always nice. And yeah, it was a good time. It was nerve-wracking, but fun.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I was in the front row, recording.
Yeah.
So you could see all the way to the back, right? So I know that historically that event will have like standing room only in the back. Was it like that last night?
There were people standing in the back. I don't know if it was for lack of seating necessarily. I think there were still some kind of seats here and there, but it was pretty full throughout. And it was definitely some people kind of coming and going in the back, and all the candidates were there, which was really great. And
well, they do a great job promoting it. And to your point, there's a lot of people in Poway that are very engaged, right? And they follow, the goings on in their city. And whenever it's election time, a lot of people pay attention.
Yes.
And that's a good thing, right?
It is. I mean, Poway has, I think, one of the highest voter turnouts in the county.
Really?
Which is fantastic. I think in 2016 it was 80 something. Don't quote me on that, but
it was high.
It was really high, significantly higher than you normally see. So I'm really curious to see how it'll be for a midterm election. That's always a little different than a presidential.
Right.
But I think that there are some really big races this year, and hopefully people get out and share their voice.
I think so. And I think with the districting that's going on in Poway, I think that's creating a different, energy, because I think different, subsets of Poway are kind of have, they finally have the representation that maybe they never thought they had before. And so a lot of the candidates, especially the ones that are running in the district elections, are energized, by the districting.
There's a lot of passion in these races, I think, which is great. I mean, you want people that really care. Yeah. And that's nice to see, because a lot of people feel very passionately about living in Poway.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's take a walk down, some of your experiences here in Poway. I know.
Okay.
I know you're a new parent. Okay. So tell us a little bit about your child and your family.
So I have a 9-month-old daughter. Her name's Clara, and it's obviously our first grandchild in the family. So she's just spoiled rotten. Right. Completely life-changing, and really the catalyst for what I'm doing in my life right now. When we had her, we were living in a apartment in Mission Valley. No sense of community, no sense of who our neighbors were. It was just really, I would remember sitting there thinking, we're not going to take her trick-or-treating here. We're not going to, even though she's not going to be in school for a while, we wanted to figure out where that was going to be and where we wanted to settle our family. So it was really a discussion for essentially my entire pregnancy of what do we want to do? What's our plan? And we started looking around and talking to friends that live in other parts of the county. And I'm from Encinitas. My husband's from San Marcos. So obviously you kind of are drawn back to North County. This could spark a war, but I consider Poway North County.
Of course it is. Of course it's North County. Yeah.
There's some strong opinions out there about where it falls.
There's silly Twitter chatter that says Poway is East County.
Yes, my husband always tells me that, the East County, North County conversation is back on Twitter.
So, but I generally think of us as North County.
I think of us as North County as well.
Yeah.
That it just feels that's kind of where we fit.
Right.
So we were kind of looking across the spectrum of North County cities and just kept being drawn back to Poway. And it really has a family, community-oriented character.
Oh, very much so.
That you get, I think, as soon as you're here. I mean, I remember the weekend we moved in, we're, crazy busy unpacking boxes and everything. So we went to a taco shop to get dinner and we're sitting there kind of waiting for our food. And there were like 4 families in there with their kids, clearly having just come from like soccer practice. I think the kids were like in soccer games. Yeah. The kids were in uniforms. The parents are sitting there having a beer after, their meal. The kids are running around with popsicles. And I looked at my husband and I said, we never saw this in Mission Valley.
Oh, yeah, no way. Not in Mission Valley.
I mean, it is such a different vibe. Yeah. And so from day one, it was like, this is where you want to raise a family.
Oh, no doubt.
And now, we're number 1 in the county for places to raise families.
That's right.
So
yeah, I remember seeing that.
I picked right. I didn't even know that was Encinitas was actually ranked right below Poway.
Ha.
And so I've joked I moved up.
Yeah, there you go.
I grew up in Encinitas, and now I'm going to have my daughter grow up in Poway. One step up.
Good for you. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, your child is part of your motivation to run. And you saw a little bit of that from the other candidates as well last night, where they're planting roots here, and having, a great place to raise a family is important in this community. A lot of people, speaking for myself, my wife and I moved here before we had children because we knew it was a great place to start a family and we knew the school district was so good.
Yeah.
And so I think people have all that in mind when they come here. And then the whole culture of Poway is such that, there's tremendous amount of family activity, soccer.
All the time.
Baseball, softball. It's unbelievable.
There's always stuff going on.
Always. And you're going to meet so many people as your child grows up, and then your child has their friends, and then you meet the parents of the friends. And it's an awesome experience.
It is. Obviously I don't want her to grow faster than she is. It flies by too fast anyways, but there's so much stuff that I've seen that I'm like, oh, it'll be so fun when she's able to participate in that, or when she can get excited that we're going to go do that, or even with Halloween coming, and there's a big, Halloween thing at Old Poway Park, and just thinking like, now she's not really going to be into it or care, but what a fun thing to know that that's coming, and next year we can take her and all of that. So I just feel like we have a lot to look forward to with raising her here.
Oh, yeah.
Because of that there's really, I feel like everything that happens here has families in mind.
Absolutely true. Yeah,
and
very much so.
It's really special and very different than, because it also has that small town feel. So not only is it families, but it's families that are getting to know each other and are connected and have this community feel that even if there are a lot of families that live in other places, they don't necessarily come together and help each other and build those networks. So everything that I've had in my experience that I've witnessed being here confirms that we made the right choice for our family. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. and so, we hope to continue that, right?
Yes.
What was Mayor Voss saying last night, we're already the best and we want to get better, right? So, which is good, just keep raising the bar.
Yeah, we're not done yet.
No, not at all. No. So let's, again, a lot of this is great because I'm getting to know you. I think a lot of the people in Poway are getting to meet you, and this is a great place to do that. Let's talk a little bit about, you said you were raised by your 2 parents and they were both deputies.
Yeah.
So how did that influence you?
So my parents were both on the Deputy Sheriff's Department. That's actually how they met.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty cool. They've been married for almost probably getting close to 35 years now, raised 4 kids together. And I think that anyone that is close to people that are in law enforcement or in public safety, firefighters, cops, there's always a strong sense of giving back and serving your community and giving. I mean, really, it's a selfless. You will die for your community at the very worst of it. That you will put your life on the line. And so that always resonated with me growing up with my parents, because it was kind of a no-brainer that that's what you do. Right. You give back however you can. Mm-hmm. And so that really is what influenced how my career went as an adult. I didn't go into law enforcement, but I really wanted to be a part of my community, be civically involved. I've voted since I was 18. I've always followed those things and understood that, we talk about voting being a right, but it's also a privilege.
Oh, that's true, for sure.
And a lot of people don't always see it that way. And we're really lucky to live in a country that's just the norm. That you can vote and people don't even know, when election day is, or they don't really pay attention to that stuff. And they have the freedom to do that because that's the kind of country we live in. And so I just have found it really important that wherever I'm at, I think when I studied abroad, I voted absentee, and it's just been something that's been really important to me. So that's kind of where my parents come in. And then as has been talked about a little bit, my mom was also in local politics. And so that was really eye-opening to me because I believe in like 6th grade when she first ran. She had retired from the sheriff's department and been a stay-at-home mom while we were really little. And then as we, got older and in school and all of that, she wanted to find something more for herself and get involved, and actually started with working on some school issues and getting involved with school boards and all of that. And the opportunity came for her to run for city council, and she did that. She was on the Encinitas council for 8 years, I believe. And really just, it really showed me that the impact you have on people is really through local government.
Oh, yeah.
I learned that even more when I started working in Congress and seeing how removed DC is from really what's happening in people's lives.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's like what's happening inside the Beltway is very different than outside.
Yes. So I was lucky enough to have some time working in the House of Representatives and get that experience, which was great because it is important to understand how those systems work and what impacts do happen, because we get a lot of money from the federal government and from the state government. So to understand those funding streams, to understand the strings that are tied to them, which is oftentimes very frustrating for local governments.
Yes, it is.
I'm a big advocate of local control. Give us the money, but don't tell us what to do with it.
Right.
But learning that firsthand really emphasize that I want to get back to San Diego. I want to get involved in local government because that's what affects your day-to-day lives. The roads you drive on, the parks you visit, the schools your kids attend, the neighborhoods you live in, how safe they are, all of those things, that's the local level. That's not coming from DC. That's not coming from Sacramento. That's here. So that's really where my passion has been, is local government.
Yeah, well, you were heavily influenced by your parents. And I think it's interesting, as you said, that you felt almost a need or an obligation to serve, right? And it's kind of similar to military families in a way, where...
It is. I think there is a lot of similarities.
So it's, part of the family culture and the heritage. And so, yeah, I applaud that. That's good. But you're right. I think, what happens in our communities is so impactful, not just to us as individuals, but to our children, because you want them to be growing up in a healthy, safe, community where there's going to be a lot of support.
Exactly.
Right? So that's good.
So that's where it all comes back to my daughter.
Right. It always does.
Because I look at, it's a great place to live now, but we've seen that if you don't have the right leadership or the leadership doesn't have the right vision, it doesn't stay that way. I mean, you can't be complacent. You can't just assume, oh, because we've always been safe, we'll always be safe. It has to stay a priority. You have to make sure that you stay on top of it. And so that's where, I saw the opportunity and felt like, well, if this is where we've chosen to make our home, I have some experience that I think would be valuable. I think it would be helpful to the city. And so that was really kind of my jump into it, was feeling like I have something that I could offer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure, just all those evenings around the dinner table and hearing your mom and dad speaking about whether it was law enforcement or city council.
Yeah.
And you probably heard the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh,
So you probably, have some insight, and maybe, let's go down that path. Like, you've been at DC, and I know you work for one of the supervisors at the county.
I work at the county.
And then, now you have a lot of local government that you've witnessed. What are some things that you've seen out there that you think were really innovative ideas, or maybe things that worked especially well that you think maybe Poway could benefit from?
Well, I think that one of the biggest issues that we see is our budget, and that our revenues and our expenditures are getting closer and closer. That gap is closing. That's really concerning, because things like parks and good roads and top public safety take money. Yeah. And those costs don't necessarily go down when you have revenue not growing. I mean, it's not, and they go hand in hand. You need that revenue to pay for it. So I think that there are some really great examples of revitalization in neighborhoods and communities that are taking ownership of their city and what that means, what the character of their city is, what that looks like. And so that can kind of take us right into the talk about Poway Road, because I think that's one of the huge things that we're going to see is the city taking ownership of that area and saying, we want to have a town center. We want to have a destination. We want to have a place that attracts residents, because we don't really have anything like that. We have Old Poway Park and Old Poway Village. Other than that, it's kind of these, sparse little commercial centers with maybe, one place. Like, we go to Renee's a lot, the Mexican restaurant. That it's in the same shopping center as a lot of the church thrift stores. Yeah. But not much else there to draw people and say, well, I'm going to go to dinner and then I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to go have lunch and walk around, or things like that. So I love the idea of coming together with our vision, which is what that specific plan. It's a really lengthy but very interesting document if anyone ever wants to spend the time reading it. Okay. But it really goes through kind of what the process was to get us here, what area we're talking about, what kind of changes we want to see, and how we want to make sure that it stays true to the city. And that's a really key thing that I think people need to remember, is that we're not only was this process to get to the plan a very lengthy, open, community-involved process. Anyone could attend the meetings. But it continues to be that, because every project still has to come before the council. It has to go through that process. And I know for myself, I would encourage any, business owner or property owner that's looking at doing a project in Poway, work with the community. Don't come to us and just have, this pie in the sky idea and not have any idea of what people feel or what people want in the neighborhood, because that's who you're going to affect, right?
Well, those are their customers, right? I mean, so
exactly.
You got to be able to have an offering that's going to be, compatible with the community they're going to serve.
Right. So I think that that's a really valuable aspect of implementing the plan, this, kind of long-term vision for that area, is that it continues to be a process, and it continues to evolve as we see what projects come forward, what projects are there's interest for, and what there's not. We can also say no, even though you can do that here, even though it aligns with the policy set in the plan. We don't think it's right for Poway. We don't think that you mesh with our vision. So, go back to the drawing board, try again, and we've seen that. There was a project that came to a development conference at the council before I was there, and the feedback the council gave them was not very encouraging. and they dropped their option to purchase because they said, we're not lining up. What we want to do and what the city needs aren't the same. So I thought that was a really great example of this continuing to be a process and continuing to include input from not just the owners of the project, but the people that will be impacted and the people that they want to draw there.
Right. Well, yeah, it has to be a cooperative process, right? Because if, and I don't mean that from it's got to be cooperative, not just from the government or societal perspective, but a smart business owner or a smart property owner knows it has to be cooperative.
Absolutely.
Because it has to be something that's compatible with the community, and it's going to be a service to customers that'll want to flock there.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about this, the plan and, sort of retaining the character of Poway. Share with me, what are some of the things in the plan that you read about that you thought were interesting, that caught your attention?
I think one of the really big things that's highlighted is connectivity. So even though we have these, separate parcels that may be separate projects, so you have, the Outpost, for example, and then you have Meridian Sudbury looking into a potential project. One of the important things of that plan is that they work well together so that you're not building in silos. You're not having, one commercial center that is completely boxed in, and you pull in, you park, you go there, then you pull out and you drive down and you pull into another, that it flows together so that you could park in, say, the Outpost parking garage and walk down, and maybe even walk to Community Park, because that's another aspect of the connectivity, is that it doesn't just create, these nicer commercial centers, but it really creates a new type of community feel where you do have that connectivity, and the project owners have to take into account what's already there.
Right.
And work it in, and not just plop something in because they think it'll make money or that it'll be a good project. So I thought that was a really important aspect of it, because it goes along with being a cohesive vision for the city, and not just we want to remodel the commercial centers because we don't like how they look.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there has to be a vision, right? There has to be almost sort of even if it's a mental thing, it's an artistic rendering of what we believe this is going to be.
Exactly.
And of course, when it actually comes to life, it's going to look maybe a little different than what you had in mind, but hopefully it captures a lot of the same, values, and some of the main principles that were thought of in the beginning.
I'm really optimistic about it. I think that as we've talked about the Outpost kind of being a catalyst for this and setting a tone, because as that project gets built and as it becomes open and used by residents, I think other property owners will start to see that, okay, this is the direction we're going in. This is what we want to be. And I'm hopeful that it will kind of spread and it'll inspire people to really take pride in those properties and become, again, I always say I want to make it a destination. I want to make it where people want to go and hang out, and I'd love to plan a girls' night or have date night and stay in Poway.
Yeah. Oh wow, imagine that.
And it's really hard to do that, right?
Sometimes it is.
It's we aren't known for that type of stuff, and so I just think it would be lovely to have those options for people.
But I think to your point, the Outpost is a catalyst, and generally speaking, I think everyone agrees that Poway Road needs to be revitalized in some form, right?
If you don't, tell me why, because I don't think you can drive down that road and say we're done. Well,
yeah, clearly, no. It's a hodgepodge of randomness. I think a lot of it was before the city was incorporated,
right?
So there was no plan. But even the largest critics of the Poway Road Corridor revitalization plan, they even agree that it needs something, right? Right? If nothing else, a fresh coat of paint,
Right.
So the thing that I find intriguing about the Outpost project, besides, the what is it? Is it a beer garden that's there? Did you say?
It's like a food hall. So it's with the same, I think it's called Three Brothers. They do Urge. gastropub.
Yeah.
So it's their business, and they want to bring in kind of this food hall, which, another aspect of this specific plan is kind of these public gathering places, these open plaza type areas where you're not just going into a restaurant or into a store. There's places where you can hang out and enjoy your cup of coffee outside, or have brunch with a friend, and kind of have that environment that still keeps it, I hope, to still have that small town feel. And I think that's really the goal, is that they're not mutually exclusive.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think, you'll see that in other communities, in either they're big cities or medium or small cities where, there's a whole series of businesses, but there are these open plazas where people are, grabbing a cup of coffee or like a sandwich to go, and there's a park bench, and they're just enjoying the day.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, there's like kids buzzing around on bikes or there's just other activity.
And especially if you have the connectivity to like community park, for example, I mean, that's a great, hey, take your kids, they can ride their bike, then ride your bike over to have a cup of coffee, get some breakfast, go back. I mean, there's a lot of really fun ways that this could be used.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. And, this project's important because for a lot of people, there's still this sort of fear, uncertainty, doubt, because the Poway Road Corridor plan is, right now just on paper, right? And they've broken ground, but we haven't really started to see it yet.
Right.
But once the Outpost is up and running, then people, I think, will get a better understanding of what this really means.
I hope so. I hope so.
And then to your point, I think it'll spread, right? And then I think some of the concerns, I think, from others will begin to melt away. And if, I'll just take a worst case scenario, for some reason that it turns out that it's completely the opposite of what the community wants.
Right.
We'll hear about it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I'm really anxious to hear feedback from people once Outpost is completed, up and running, and they start to see what it looks like and what that means, and how their lives are changed or impacted or benefited from it. And I really think that we'll get a lot of good feedback from that. I mean, Poway residents are not afraid of sharing how they feel, which is fantastic. So it's pretty easy to get a tap on the pulse. And so I think that'll be a really good opportunity to start saying, okay, this is the vision.
So what's the timetable on this? Do you know?
It all depends on kind of who's interested and what kind of projects we get proposed.
No, for the Outpost.
Oh, for the Outpost?
What's the schedule on that?
I mean, I think like by mid next year. I don't know the for sure. I wasn't a part of the approval process.
Right.
So it's not fresh in my mind, but soon. I mean, I think they're pretty driven to get it up and going.
Well, every time I've driven by, I think there's a fence around it, right? So you can't really see in as well.
Right.
But I'd imagine it's like any one of the projects where they're doing all the underground infrastructure.
Well, they have to do the parking garage.
Oh, that's right.
So
that's a big deal.
That's going to be, I think as soon as that's completed, you'll really start to see some progress.
Oh, then we'll start seeing it
because it'll start going up.
Yeah.
Right. Not too high though, but.
Okay. Right. Okay, good. Yeah, so that'll be exciting. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think it'll be really great.
Because my wife and I are, on like a Friday night, like, where do you want to go? Let's go out and get something. And we like to go to the Brigantine every once in a while, or we'll go to some places in RB. And it'd be nice to have something new,
Yep. Nice to have something new, nice to have options, something that, is in your city. I mean, I think it's great to love where you live and have pride for that. And part of that means enjoying when you get to socialize there and go out and things like that. And so I always hate when it's like, where do you want to go? We want to go, to a nice date night kind of place. Yeah. And it's the same places that we've been to. So we want to try something new. We end up leaving Poway, and you don't have a lot of those, new experiences or places bringing in, acoustic music for the evening or things like that I think will really bring more of an atmosphere to the area.
I agree. Well, I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a good project for the city and, kind of this natural evolution because, we moved here in 96. And even back then, they were talking about the Poway Road plan and or the fact that there wasn't a plan.
It's been a long time coming, I think.
So you're getting involved at just the right time. So, yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about a few other issues here in Poway. One topic that has come up with a lot of the other people that have visited the podcast is the Stone Ridge Project. And, but you're not allowed to speak on that. John Mullen warned me on that one.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, even any candidate that speaks about it, if they were to be elected, that could become an issue. I mean, I think people sometimes don't realize that all these projects are entitled to a fair hearing without having preconceived decisions or preconceived notions. All I would say is I think we're at a point where, I mean, it can't stay the way it is.
Right.
So what that looks like, what it becomes, what project that is, all of that is still kind of up in the air and yet to be determined. But I think that, I'm glad that there's interest to do something with it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, they have to do something.
Yeah,
I think it's a game of chicken right now. So
it is. It's 2020 could be really interesting.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that are being thrown around and talked about. So we'll see what gets put together.
You said earlier that you studied abroad. Where did you go?
I studied in Florence, Italy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My daughter was in Florence, Italy 2 summers ago.
Oh, it's the best Italian city, possibly the best European city.
Unbelievable.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I lived there for 4 months. Lived with a host family and really the full immersion. It's really unfortunate we don't have more Italian speakers around because when I came back, I was virtually fluent.
Yeah.
And then you just don't get to use it. So every once in a while a word, comes to me and I think, oh yes, that's the Italian word for backpack or whatever.
Right.
But it was an amazing experience. Amazing. Nice. And I would love to see some values that are really intrinsic in European cities here. Certainly the community aspect is really important. The sitting with your friend and having a cup of coffee for 3 hours and just catching up and no one bothers you. No one is trying to rush anywhere. Those things I thought were really, really nice to experience. And I try to remember that when I go out to dinner and I think let's just sit here. We're going to tell the waiter, don't bother us. We'll just have a bottle of wine, talk, enjoy. Those are very Italian values that I think are great and more people should try to kind of live with those. And very much the community, family oriented, a lot of care for older generations, which I think sometimes we just in our country as a whole kind of lack. We don't always value that. Not only, our parents becoming older and need more help maybe, but we're going to be there too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we're there for them and that we think about that. We do, there's a lot, if you put kids or animals on anything, people care about it. They want to help. It's not always that way with seniors. And so that's something that I think some other countries we could probably maybe learn from. Oh, yeah.
Well, it's funny. It's like Brian Edmonston was here, and he talked about his 2 years in Sevilla in Spain and, the things that he learned. And he spoke about how the community there everything was in walking distance. Every once in a while he had to take public transportation.
Right.
He had never used his car.
Yeah.
So he would walk to the restaurant, walk to the grocery store, walk to the park. I didn't drive
for 4 months and it was great.
Yeah. So if we really want Italian in Poway, we need gelato, okay?
Right. Like authentic, true gelato.
Yeah, the real deal.
With authentic, true Italian food. Yes.
Wouldn't that be something?
I would be all about that.
Yeah. I was there with last summer with my daughter, and we had gelato every day.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's so different. It's not, it's not ice cream. The flavors are different. The way they do all of that stuff. I mean, even the little spoon you eat it with is different.
Yeah.
Yes, I had my fair share of gelato.
So back when you were studying abroad, this is during your college times. So where did you go to school?
I went to the University of San Diego.
Oh, great.
I got my bachelor's in political science And actually to study in Italy, I minored in art history.
Oh,
so
perfect.
that I could, that was the right program for me.
Yeah.
So, I did. I graduated in 2008 and was very lucky to be able to get a job because there were, it was a tough time for college grads. That's really why my husband went to law school is, he graduated and it was like, well, there's not a lot out. Maybe I'll just go back to school. And then by the time I finish, it'll be better. And that isn't quite the case, but it worked out for him. So
yeah. Well, good. I'm glad it did work out for both of you. But that was a brutal time. Yeah, I just remember.
It was.
It was tough.
I was lucky enough. In college, I interned on campaigns and was involved. And that's kind of what led me to working in the U.S. House of Representatives. And then that's ultimately how I got my job at the county because a lot of those circles are kind of small and you end up, somebody knows someone and can give you a reference or that's how I didn't even know there was a job opening. And someone told me that, they're hiring at the county. This might be a good fit for you. It's a really good entry-level job. And so I was lucky enough to be able to get my foot in the door, having worked on, some campaigns and having mutual references. Yeah. And got out of there. I was lucky. I was one of the few of my friends that had a good, solid job right out of college.
Good for you. I mean, that was a tough time, but
it was.
But it is all about networking, right?
It is. And relationships are key in everything.
In campaigning. They're key. So when you were in D.C., you were an intern for a congressman?
Right.
So who were you interning with?
I was an intern for Brian Bilbray.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And he actually, it was a kind of a fun, crazy time because he was in Congress in the 90s, representing kind of South Bay. He's an Imperial Beach guy. And then he had moved up to Carlsbad and the whole Duke Cunningham thing happened, which I don't know if you're familiar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it created this vacancy, this empty seat in a very strong Republican district. And the seat hadn't been empty in, I don't even know. Decades.
Well, decades.
Because
Cunningham had it forever. Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the top guys in DC.
Yeah.
So he threw his hat in the ring, and I think there were like 17 other Republicans on the ballot.
Oh no.
Yeah, and it was a special election, so it was crazy, and that was my first campaign.
Oh wow. Baptism by fire, right?
So we were just trying to get out there, knock on doors, call people, have events, just get the message out there. So I learned a lot. I helped organize student interns and coordinate precinct walking and all of that. So it was nice to have, it was fun to have a little bit of a leadership position. Because I was one of the first people that said, "Hey, I want to work on this campaign. I like what you're saying. I like what you're talking about." Because he's very moderate.
He's the surfer guy, isn't he?
He's the surfer, yeah. He was part of, I don't know if they still exist, but there was actually like a surfer caucus.
Oh, perfect. I like that.
Which, like for most people that maybe don't know, there's all these caucuses in D.C. where essentially you have, like interests. Yeah. And they don't necessarily do anything, but but you'll have, like the Latino caucus or some of the other kind of
Liberty caucus.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And they created like the surf caucus.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it was Brian Bilbray. There was a congressmember from Orange County in it. And so they had their own style. And I think as a result, he was kind of a laid back guy and was like, let's just talk about the issues. Let's go through them rationally, reasonably. Yeah. And so that really resonated with me because I was looking more at him as a person and not necessarily the party. And which is another reason why I really favor local government is that DC, it's all about the parties.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really frustrating for someone that, I think a lot of people, especially today, don't feel like they fit into one box or the other.
Right.
And it really does become about the person, which I think is really great because that's who you're voting for. You're not voting for a party. You're voting for a person. And so you should be considering that. And that was really what drew me to working for Brian. And, lucky enough that he won.
Yeah, good.
And because I'd been there for so long, I kind of said, there's this idea that if you're a political science major, you move to DC when you graduate.
Right.
Because, if you're an actor, you move to LA.
Right.
Poli-sci, you go to DC. And I want to test it out. That's a really big move for me.
Yeah.
I'm San Diego through and through. My family's here. I didn't even leave for college. I liked being in San Diego, close to my family. So I went out there and did some really cool stuff and really got to experience that life. I lived with, I think, 4 other women that work on the Hill in, different offices, and got to attend committee hearings, got to see votes on the floor, got to get really familiar with the Capitol, which was really cool. I actually gave tours to people.
Wow.
And so you get to go. I learned all the fun trivia about things, and I don't know have you ever been to the U.S. Capitol?
Yeah.
It's a really cool building, and there's some really fun history. Like there's still bullet holes from the War of 1812, and
I'm thinking of that Nicolas Cage movie.
Where he steals the Constitution.
Yeah. And there are all these like little crazy stories and trivia.
and it's fun to watch that movie having been there, because it's not all crazy. Like there's some pretty fascinating history. A lot of the Freemason influence is true. I mean, a lot of our leaders were Masons, and you look at kind of the layout of the city, and it has some masonry influences in it, of even how they laid out the streets.
Right.
Because only in DC would you have not only a grid, but then they throw streets in diagonal, which is so confusing. But so there's really interesting elements. But I got to do that and meet a lot of really cool people, because you can actually, I would encourage anyone that's ever going to DC, reach out to your congressman before you go, because they can help you coordinate tours and make appointments for you and kind of tell you what you should see and what you shouldn't bother with, and all of that. So I met a lot of families that were out there and got to kind of hear about them and their stories and what brought them to DC. And then I got to walk around the U.S. Capitol every day, which is really cool. I mean, you never knew who you were going to see. I mean, a lot of, I see now on CNN and things, when members are doing press, they sit in there's kind of this rotunda in some of the congressional buildings. So you have congressional buildings that have all the offices, and then you have the Capitol. And so they'll just be sitting, you'll just see, the Speaker of the House doing stuff, or the majority leaders having interviews, or these rising stars. And I befriended somebody that worked it was Nancy Pelosi at the time was the Speaker of the House, and I actually befriended somebody that worked for her and got to go on the Speaker's balcony, which has a gorgeous view out onto the mall, the National Mall. You have the Washington Monument right there. It's gorgeous. It's probably, I think it's better than the White House. The Speaker's office is really incredible.
I was unaware that this even existed.
Oh, it's beautiful. So that just those things that I'm like, wow, this is really cool. There's a lot of people that don't even know this exists, let alone be able to come out here, see it, experience that.
So this is right after you graduated in 08.
This is right before.
Right before.
So
this is before.
I was trying to figure out, am I going to graduate and go to DC, or am I going to stay here? And so I did kind of a test run. And really learned a lot, got very familiar. A lot of the big issues at that time were related to immigration, and those were kind of some of the hot button issues. And the biggest thing that I took away was, this was a really cool experience, but this is not what I want 24/7.
Oh yeah,
because it never ends. It never ends.
Right.
I like work-life balance. And, I have my friends that are really into politics and into government and love talking about it. And I have my friends that are like, I'm not interested. You can tell me to vote and I probably won't. I just, I don't care. And that's fine. People have, all their freedoms to do that. But it's nice sometimes to take a break from talking about that and talk about some, other stuff, or mom stuff, or trashy reality TV, or whatever it is.
Right.
But in DC, I mean, the first you meet someone and the first things out of their mouth are, who do you work for? And you just think, well, that doesn't, that's not my identity.
Right, because they're trying to pigeonhole you, right?
Exactly, exactly. And then you spend the rest of the night talking about whatever happened on Capitol Hill that day.
Well, that's the trashy reality TV.
It is, I know. Well, now, gosh, it's like, it's crazy town. I think
How was it being there in 2008? That was like, during a presidential election year. So it must have been pretty interesting.
It was. I was there. So I graduated in 2008. So I was there in 2007.
Oh, okay. Excuse me.
So it wasn't the Obama hadn't, that wave hadn't come.
Right.
But the Democrats controlled the House. So I got to see a lot of kind of what you are dealing with when you're in the minority. When it's even harder to get anything done.
Oh, yeah.
And it's even harder to, but it also really taught me, Brian was really big about these kind of bilateral coalitions and having, across the aisle legislation and all of that. And I thought that was really important because you have to work together. And most good government is usually a compromise. You're usually coming, you have people that are on either side and you have to come together and think, well, really what's best for everyone? How do we make this work? I feel like that's kind of going away in DC, which is really sad to see.
It's true.
I think I saw something recently that, the country's never been more isolated. People are clinging so hard to these sides that I think it's making it virtually impossible to really get good things done because people can't see through the trees, basically.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness we don't have that here locally, right?
Right. And that goes back to kind of the importance of relationships.
Yeah.
And having those. And that's where I think that one of the things I offer that I bring with me is relationships, because I've worked in the county for over a decade now. And once you've been here for a while, you realize that it's kind of a small world.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that, I worked with so-and-so on this, and now 5 years later, they're doing this. And small world where we now have, another issue that we want to work on together or talk about, or because as much as Poway's kind of a little bubble, we can't act like it all the time. We have to remember that that we have a place regionally, and there's things that go on regionally that affect Poway. And if we don't have our voice being heard, if we don't have our representation there, we lose out on opportunities that would be really great for the city. So it's nice when you have those relationships and you can just pick up the phone and call someone.
Yeah.
And you're not kind of cold calling.
Yeah.
That I've kind of work to cultivate over the years.
That's important.
And it's, I hope will make me a better advocate for Poway, make me a better representative, because not only am I, my number one priority will always be Poway's interests, but I see how we fit into the region and what that means and how we can get there. So I know John Mullen talked a little bit about some of the regional boards that council members serve on, and those are really important. They are often kind of the not talked about aspect of the job, but when you're talking about things like MTS and Sandag that have true impacts to our city, it's really important that we know what's going on there, that we have our voice heard, especially at a place like Sandag where, Sacramento is constantly trying to kind of water down some of the smaller cities and give a lot more power to the city of San Diego. We have 18 cities. San Diego is only one of them.
Right.
And so it's really important that we continue to really be an advocate for that. And the mayor being vice chair is a really kind of a boon for Poway, because we're not one of the bigger cities, and to have our leadership get to be leadership there as well is kind of gravy, because we really will be represented well. We will be heard. And hopefully, at the very least, he can call attention to things that maybe because they're North County issues, they don't always get talked about.
Right.
And I think that's a consistent fight that we have as some of the North County cities, is really being heard at that level. And I learned a lot about that with working for the county supervisor, because he represents a lot of the 78 corridor, which has a lot of struggles. I mean, the 78 is a pretty miserable freeway. 78-5 interchange, pretty miserable. The 1556, I mean, those things, we need to call attention to them, because the city of San Diego is not going to care about it.
Right.
And so it's really great that we have those opportunities to kind of highlight those and say, wait. Okay, yeah, that's great that you want to do these public transportation projects, but we also need to talk about the freeway. We need to talk about traffic in North County. We need to talk about this. So I think it's I understand those things and really have a familiarity with them, which I hope makes me more effective and a better council member.
Yeah. Well, it's, again, relationships, right?
It is. I mean, that's the core of most things, right?
Right. Because you got to work with other people to kind of craft deals that are going to be win-wins, right?
Absolutely.
So you've been with the county for 10 years. So is it Supervisor Horn?
Yes.
That you work on his team?
Yes.
So just walk us through those 10 years. What are some of the, maybe some interesting stories or experiences that you've had? Probably a lot of them.
Well, so I'm the senior policy advisor. I handle public safety policy, which the county has the district attorney, we have the sheriff's department, we have probation, a lot of regional aspects. And so I've been the key person on that, as well as Health and Human Services, which is the largest chunk of the county's budget, because we implement all entitlement programs, all benefits, really working with some of the neediest in our county that really need kind of that extra leg up, that support, even through like drug and alcohol services and homelessness, a lot of those things. And so it's been very eye-opening, because I think I'm very aware of what issues are happening in San Diego, and I kind of look at it as, okay, I know that homelessness is a really big issue in the city of San Diego, right? They've been dealing with that a lot. Hasn't really made its way to Poway, but I think it's something to stay vigilant about and make sure that we're looking at opportunities for things like affordable housing, and how do we be a good partner in that, incentivizing that, responsible growth, and because there's always going to be kind of a crossover that some things come into our city that maybe didn't originate here. Gangs are another thing that I've worked a lot with the supervisor on. The 78 corridor has a really unique gang problem. They have generational gangs, which is different than a lot of areas that deal with gang problems, because it's much harder to get someone out of a gang when their grandpa and their dad and their uncle and their brother have all been in that gang. I mean, it's a lot harder to kind of get those kids out. But we've done some really great things to try to help them. One of the things that the supervisor did that I was really proud to work on, and I thought has one of those immediate life-changing effects, is a tattoo removal program.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
So, because you have these kids that they get into a gang at 10, 11, 12 years old. They start getting tatted up. And statistics show that generally, unless you become kind of one of the head honchos, or, you end up in prison, you kind of age out of the gang life around early mid-20s. Start having kids, start kind of living a different lifestyle. And you start to realize that these face and neck tattoos are really hindering your growth and hindering your employment opportunities, and hindering really being able to be a productive member of society. And so something like a tattoo removal that's free of charge. People apply through a nonprofit in North County, and they're kind of screened to make sure that they really have changed their life, that they're not, still committing crimes or on active probation or things like that. But we have a doctor that donates his time to operate the machine, and these people get to go through it and really get those tattoos that put them in a box removed.
That's awesome.
And it's really incredible. And so opportunities like that, I think, are maybe not, the exact same thing is needed in Poway, right?
Yeah.
But to look at what is needed to really help people bridge a gap.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of the things that I've really learned is looking at, it sounds like a small thing, like, oh, you're just removing their tattoos. Are you helping them get a job? Are you finding them housing? Are you helping them, get things expunged? No. But there are those resources, and this is still a really huge first step.
Absolutely.
So sometimes just looking at what's accomplishable and how you get there really helps when you're talking about what does the city need, or what will be successful, what can we implement. You want to look at things that are reachable and achievable.
It is achievable. That's a good program. I didn't know it existed.
Yeah.
It's interesting how you said that, the gangs are multi-generational. And then we started off our conversation about the multi-generational, local government service aspect.
Yeah, I know my parents were maybe arresting the grandparents and parents of the kids that I'm trying to get out of gangs.
That's funny how that works. But yeah, the influence of our parents is so important, which makes the family life in Poway so important. But I want to go back to the topic that you brought up is about homelessness. And, there are homeless folks here in Poway. We see them.
There are.
And so what are some of the things that the city is doing or could be doing to help them out?
I think one of the biggest things is we have our some of the work that I've done, and I want to kind of tap in and see if this is possible in Poway or what they think. But our law enforcement is often the most in contact with homeless, right?
Right. That makes sense.
So ensuring that our officers have the knowledge and the tools that when they do encounter someone who, yes, that they're maybe causing a disturbance or they're drunk in public or whatever it was that created that law enforcement contact, if they can go beyond simply, the option is either we leave them and write them a ticket or we arrest them. I mean, there are a lot more options to offer people. So what I would love is to make sure that they know about these, because in our whole county, we may not have a program that they can enter into in Poway, but we have them in the county. And so that's, again, where kind of that regional perspective is really important, because that's one of the things that the county has been focusing on is addressing homelessness, and especially addressing it in populations like veterans, seriously mentally ill, people with substance abuse disorders, and our seniors. And so when you know that those exist, that's half the battle.
Yeah, it is.
And so I would love to really make sure that our law enforcement and the folks that are coming in direct contact, especially on a regular basis. I mean, most of the law enforcement people that I talk to say, we know that person. They frequent this corner. They frequently do this. This is some of their issues. And so they've almost already built a relationship now, right?
Yeah,
because they're interacting with them so much. So then if they could go to them and say, hey, there's this program, you could get in, you maybe have to be willing to look for employment or, whatever the standards of that program or that living facility are, but they can start to have that conversation. And maybe not the first time, maybe not the fifth time, but eventually maybe that person will say, hey, remember you talked to me about, that option? Is it still available? I'm sick of this. This isn't, how I want my life to be or whatever. So I think we've seen that in other areas of the county, at least I have through my work. And I think that's a really important step, because that we know that they're going to be contacted by law enforcement. We know that there's going to be that relationship. So if we can provide our officers with the tools to go beyond simply citing them or arresting them, I think that really can be impactful.
It can be. I think you're right, because there are so many resources that exist, whether they're, public resources or they're, charitable resources or just, good people that, want to reach out and help on their own. Those resources exist. In some cases, they're bending over backwards to help folks, but people aren't aware, right? Especially if you're struggling in homelessness. I mean, you're not, doing a Google search, you're struggling.
Yep.
So it's good to have a person that can connect the dots, right?
Right.
And that can network and build the relationships and connect people.
I've worked a little bit with Oceanside, kind of established this homeless outreach team with these police officers, and they even will bring in, social service workers or case managers to even augment that team and really be able to go out and say, look, here are all the options you have. Do any of these sound good? We can't force people to change their lives. We can't force people to not live on the street or not make the choices that they're making, but we can always offer those choices. And so I think that, if you can reach out to 20 people and you get 3 of them to take you up on the offer, that's a success.
Yeah, that's huge.
3 more people that are, bettering their lives and have a roof over their head and all of that. So that's really, to me, that's one of the key aspects of that is where do we know that they're already being contacted so that we don't have to create additional resources to go find them? We know that this contact is happening, so let's make it worthwhile. Let's make it a valuable contact.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's shift gears a minute. Okay. So, I think I just want to get to know you more, personally. So, and I know you just had a child, and
I did.
That is, at least speaking for myself, the most, life-changing moment.
It rocks your world.
No doubt. And in good ways, but everything changes.
Oh, yeah.
So just share with me a little bit, maybe, today and even going back a few years, what do you like to do when you're not talking government stuff?
Yeah. Well, I love being a mom. That really is certainly consuming my life right now. She's at a really fun age.
Oh, yeah.
9 months they're just making these leaps and bounds and becoming little people with their own personalities. And it's really fun to watch. My husband's a great partner in that. So I certainly wouldn't be able to be doing this without him. I mean, he steps up. I mean, Dad all the way, so engaged, so active. Yeah, he's great. So that's really kind of life consuming for right now. But you're probably your pretty typical millennial. I'm an old millennial though. I want to clarify this.
Okay.
What's
the range? Yeah. What's
right.
I don't
know.
The
range is kind of big. So I was born in 85, and I think a millennial is considered all the way to like 80 or something, but then all the way up until the 90s.
Yeah.
So I didn't grow up like I have a little brother who was born in 90. Like he's a different kind of millennial than me.
Okay.
I love country concerts, country music. That's one of I'm trying to get my husband to go to one in November for his birthday.
Okay, good. Are you going to show up for a council meeting in a cowboy hat?
I'm not a hat person. That's the one thing. I know. I love cowboy boots, but my hats, that's Steve's thing. I can't take that away from him. He's I call him the most recognizable mayor in the county because
hands down.
It's just you spot him a mile away. But I love that. I'm kind of a bookworm. I read a lot. Anything I can get my hands on. Love hanging out with my friends, really close with my family. I do a lot with my family. My parents are very involved. They're very involved grandparents, which is fantastic.
That's huge. Yeah.
I feel very blessed to have them local because I have friends that don't, have moved here and don't have any family. And I just think that, all the times I've kind of taken for granted their help.
Yeah.
Especially when we first brought her home from the hospital and you're in that craziness and you're like, wait, I haven't even eaten today. Yeah. What day is it? And all of that. Is it day or night? To have my mom there really, making sure like, okay, you need to eat. I'll take the baby. You take a break, all of that. I don't know how I would have done it without that. So that's a big thing. Family's really big. I like just trying new things. We went to the rodeo last weekend, which was super fun.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. Any kind of event. My husband's a huge baseball fan. Well, my husband's a huge sports fan.
Okay, good.
So he actually, here, we can talk about this.
Okay, good.
He's been following you on Twitter.
Oh.
And he wants your thoughts on kind of Andy Green and where you think the Padres are going.
Oh, no.
And what are you seeing? Because he said he's a baseball guy. Ask him about this.
Okay. Well, who's interviewing who?
We go to a lot of Padres games.
Okay, good. No, but I'll share with you. I'll tell you what I think. I like Andy Green. Okay. I think he's a good guy, but he's dealing with, a bunch of like minor league talent, young talent, and the building blocks that they're assembling for the organization, they're still underneath the surface. There's still A ball, double A ball. There's a few good pieces coming up. So a lot of ways he's managing with one arm tied behind his back.
Okay.
And there are people that are criticizing him for his managerial style.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of heat lately, it seems.
But you can always second guess a manager, like, oh, you shouldn't have done that double switch. Or
Monday morning quarterback and all that stuff. Yeah.
But a lot of times he's making decisions not always to win the game. He's making decisions to get certain players opportunities to pitch in big situations because he knows that in a year or two that'll become valuable.
So they need that experience.
Yeah. And other times, he's dealing with guys that are all of sort of like a similar skill level. So he kind of rotates them in a somewhat equitable fashion.
Yeah, my husband was talking about it a little bit. Like, you don't always know where Will Myers is going to play.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like he's playing third base and he's first base and all that. So I'm more of a football fan. So I don't get as into the Padres talk with him. But he's definitely, I think what's hard is people get impatient when you say like you're rebuilding.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, that should only take a year. That should only take 2 years. And sometimes it's a lot longer of a process. And you have to have that.
Well, it's like the Outpost project, right?
Right. That forward thinking.
Yeah. So the Padres literally had to like yank out the old buildings and they built the underground garage when AJ Preller did his big draft.
Right. So we're not even at ground level yet.
We're starting to see a little bit of the infrastructure pop up a little.
Okay.
But it's the same deal. That's my opinion.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a football fan. Are you a bitter Chargers fan?
I am a fan without a team right now. It's a struggle. My husband is a hardcore Saints fan. He actually saw the issues with the Charger management and ownership way back when they let Drew Brees go.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he said, "All right, I'm done with them. I'm following Drew Brees."
Yeah,
and
smart move.
So he went with him to New Orleans, and that's his team. He's a diehard Drew Brees fan. And I still am a diehard Phillip Rivers fan.
He's a good guy.
I grew up watching the Chargers with my dad. I'm a fourth generation San Diegan team or San Diegan family. And so, my dad watched it when they came to San Diego. That was a big thing. And so he'd always been a Charger fan. And now we're both kind of like swimming around trying to figure out what we're going to do. And it's really hard for me because I like watching football when I'm invested.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun for me anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, my husband just loves the game and he loves good plays and all of that stuff. So he'll watch any team. He'll always kind of figure out what you should be watching for and all of that. But I like watching my team. I like having that allegiance. So I'm on the market. I'm a fan up for grabs.
Maybe you need a fantasy team.
I know.
So,
I tried that one year because my husband, again, huge football guy. So I think this year he has 3 fantasy teams.
Really?
Maybe.
Wow.
It's a lot of work.
It's a ton. Oh my gosh.
I cannot keep up. I mean, he had to remind me every week to set my lineup, and then he'd be like, "Well, no, you can't play that person because they're injured, or no, they're playing against this team, and so you have a receiver going against your defense, or I don't even know what
he'd look at the matchups,
right." And so he's like, "You have to also look at who they're playing every week and all of that stuff." And so I threw in the towel after that season and said, "This isn't for me. I like just one team, get to know those players, be all about it." So I was really into, there was a quarterback for ASU and I was really into him, Bercovici.
Wow.
And I thought he was good. So my husband went to ASU.
Okay.
So he's a big ASU fan. So we were watching ASU games. And so I thought, if he goes to the NFL, I'll go there. Yeah. That'll become my team. Like I latched on to something like that. Well, first he got picked up by the Chargers.
Oh, no.
So
that's the curse of death right there.
Okay, really? And then I think they ended up releasing him and he's kind of just floating around. So I thought I would find a team. And I don't know what to do about it. I'm really, if anyone has any input or wants to sell their team to me, I'm open. I'm willing to hear it.
Well, my son is 18 years old, and so he made the switch to the Cardinals.
Oh,
so he roots for Arizona.
That was a lot of people did that.
Yeah,
a lot of people did that.
And I'm a native San Franciscan.
Okay.
So I'm going back to the Niners and Raiders, but I admit my interest in the NFL has been declining. And
it's hard.
And I'm now getting more interested in college football. So my school, we didn't have a football team. So
mine too.
Well, USD has a good team, but it's not like at the highest level.
It's not, and we have a team. We don't really have the interest from the school. So when I was in college, we went to the basketball games. USD is a really great basketball school. So we went to the basketball games, but like nobody really went to the football games. So that whole experience, I feel like I might kind of push my daughter to go to more of like a football school, because that's one thing I felt was lacking from my experiences. I think it would have been so fun to go to a school where Saturday you did football, you went and tailgated, you went to the game, you sat in the student section, all that stuff. Watching it on TV, it just looks like so fun to be 20 and do all of that. So I probably encourage her a little bit to look at those kinds of schools. But it's very different when you go to a school that doesn't really have that atmosphere.
No. So that makes a big difference. But I got to tell you my Drew Brees story. So when my children were really little, they used to go to this. It was like a pre-K place. It was called Teddy Bear Treehouse, and it's got a new name now. But
that's so cute.
It's like right up. I know it's a neat name, isn't it? But it's where the Target Center is. It's sort of like above that. Like and there's like it's like a preschool there, and so it was one night we went, and it was they had their Christmas recital, and I think it was like in a church somewhere. It wasn't a religious school, but they had the recital in the church, and the little kids are up on stage singing. And I look down the aisle, and there's Drew Brees. And I'm like telling my wife, I go, look, over there is Drew Brees. And it turned out that I guess one of the other Chargers had a child that was in there. Oh,
yeah. We've always been home to a lot of Chargers here in Poway.
Yeah. So Drew Brees was there. And then the other funny story that we had is we were there for, it was like a fall, Halloween time, and the parents came in at night, and we were sitting at the little chairs and the little tables, and we were cutting out like orange and black Halloween stuff. And I told my wife, go look over there. That's Brian Giles. And he used to be the right fielder for the Padres.
Yeah.
And she said, Brian Giles? She goes, he's not that tall. He's a professional athlete. And I go, well, yeah. And look
they're always smaller in person, right?
Yeah. I think because he's well under 6 feet. I think he's probably about 5'10". And so she didn't believe me.
Oh, that's funny.
And I said,
anybody who would know, she didn't just know that you would.
But she's always like, you're just making this up. Or so I go, no. We'll go, you don't believe me? I go, look at his wife. And she looked at the wife and said, okay, that's a professional baseball player.
Oh, my gosh. That's great.
It was a funny story.
Great.
So,
how funny.
Here in Poway, you don't know who you're going to run into.
I know.
There's all these professional athletes, baseball, football, basketball. Unbelievable.
It's the place to be. Well, why wouldn't you want to move here?
What a great place to live, isn't it?
It is. So they're moving here for the same reasons that most people are. It's pretty funny. I talk to people that, I get a lot. Poway people, you move here and you stay here.
Yeah.
Right? So I talk to a lot of people that's, I moved here in the 70s. I moved here in the 80s. And I always ask them, why did you move here? What brought you here? And 9 times out of 10, it's almost identical to the reasons that brought me here. It's pretty crazy that we've been able to maintain that and keep people here for those reasons, that it's where you want to raise your family. It's where you want to send your kids to school. It has that small town feel, all those things. And to go back to kind of why I'm doing it is that reason.
Right.
I want to stay here. I always tell those people, I want to be you. In 30 years, I want to be telling someone, I moved here way back when, and this is how it was, and all of that, because it's so important that we have kind of that continued vision and that continued leadership that keeps us on the right path and understands why people want to live here.
Yeah.
And so things like keeping it safe, keeping it family friendly, nice roads. You can never complain about the roads in Poway. You know, those things that just they're uniquely Poway. The rodeo. Exactly. Old Poway Park and the train.
Yeah.
So fun. Yeah. So special. Just things like that really we kind of are our own little bubble over here,
but in a good way.
In a good way.
Yeah. It's like our own little paradise.
It is.
But I was telling that to my children all the time, because then they're living in Poway and they're surrounded by a lot of other kids that in some cases come from very wealthy families and drive really nice cars. Like, oh my God. And so I always tell my kids, I go, you live in a bubble. You live in Disneyland.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful when you're growing up. But then when they move out and go to college, then they get a little bit more of a reality check,
Yeah. Did you find it hard to kind of keep your kids humble with some of that stuff? And not to like reverse the interview on you, but I grew up in a similar city, where Encinitas, there were a lot of kids with a lot of money and getting, brand new Beamers when they turned 16. My parents were public servants. They weren't getting rich off anything. Right. So that wasn't what I got at 16. I was lucky to have, a hand-me-down car to get to school and take my sister. And I think it was good for me because it really made me appreciate that and understand everything that my parents were able to provide for us and that they were around. Yeah. That, I had friends whose parents had to travel a lot for work and so I think there are always sacrifices that go along with some of that stuff. And so it was really nice that, my family was just always really tight and set really good examples for that. But it kind of makes you a little more appreciative because I saw kids with these brand new cars and they didn't even realize what they had or how lucky they were.
They don't understand.
Things like that. So I see the same kind of challenges maybe with raising kids in Poway is that there's going to be some differences in opportunities and homes and all of that. But
this is the things you learn as a parent, and as a parent, we don't know everything. We kind of learn as we go. We get good input from our parents.
There's no book. They don't give you a book when you have a kid.
No manual. The book is in your mom's head, right? It's what your mother tells you and what your father tells you. And so, we learned as we went and, but, our children always drove the hand-me-down car and, it's an interesting dynamic here in Poway because I don't know. I always joke about the culture of Poway, because it's politely and friendly competitive as well. Okay. And you'll notice that when your children play sports.
I was going to say the youth sports. That's a world we haven't yet entered, but I can only imagine.
So you'll see, that there, even amongst the parents, there's like it's subtle, but it's there. So it's just it's unique about our town.
Yeah.
But you're gonna love it. As you're loving it now.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna love it.
Oh yeah.
Next month, and you're gonna love it in 2 years. You're gonna love it in 8 years. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
The whole thing is great, and this is a fantastic place to raise your child, and maybe more. Who knows, right?
Hopefully, that's the plan.
Yeah.
We both my husband and I, we both have siblings, and so I think that's kind of I always envision having kind of a larger family and all of that. And especially if I'm able to have the opportunity to spend more time at home and be with my kids. That's kind of my selfish interest in being on council is that I'd be able to balance that a little more.
Well, if your husband's an attorney, I think the numbers probably work out pretty well that way, He's
an attorney, but he works for the state of California. So
okay. So he's a humble attorney.
He does. He's a hearing officer with the Labor Commissioner's Office. So he does, he settles issues now he decides issues, kind of like a quasi-judge role.
Okay.
Where, an employer and employee aren't able to come to terms and kind of settle whatever differences they have about breaks or pay or vacation or whatever it was that they feel, the employer feels they have or the employee feels they haven't gotten what they were owed or what they worked for.
Yeah.
You have an opportunity to settle.
Yeah.
And then if you can't do that, you actually go to a hearing.
Yeah.
And my husband kind of presides over that.
It's like an arbitration of some kind.
Yeah. So he hears both sides and kind of decides what he thinks is correct or what actually happened and issues these judgments, or I'm sure that he's going to yell at me that I'm not calling them the right things, but these decisions. That kind of resolve those issues. So
that's great.
He's trained as an attorney. He's licensed, but he's doing kind of more of a administrative judge role.
That's important. But there you go. There's more public service, right? So
I know. Yeah.
So your children are destined. We already know generally what career path they're going to go down. I'm joking. Again, we'll switch gears again a little bit. Lately, there's been some fireworks at the city council meetings, and I saw some of the videotape, and I, there's a vocal group, that's battling with a lot of the members on the council, and I know that one of the hot buttons for them had to do not with you personally, but with the whole appointment process that went on. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about, your new role in the context of some of the feelings that some people have about the process.
Yeah. I've heard a lot that the feelings are about the process and not about me. But it's hard not to always take some of that stuff personally.
Yeah, of course.
There's been, some statements that, I feel like are more about me.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I wish that there would have been more of an openness to get to know me first and figure out what I'm about, what experience I have, what I bring to the table. And I think people got so upset about what they felt the process did wrong that they couldn't do that. And so that was hard because I don't have these ulterior motives. I don't have really goals beyond being able to serve the city I live in and want to raise my family in. And so I just want people to take the opportunity to get to know me a little bit better and then maybe decide that yes, we align and they think that I, represent their values and beliefs well, or that we don't. And if we disagree, we disagree. But then it's at least about me and what I'm doing and not so much about something that really was beyond anything I had control over, which was the process.
Right.
Right. And so that's kind of what I've been working on is just getting out there, getting in front of as many people as I can and sharing what I'm about, what I believe in, why I want to do this. And in all honesty, for the most part, I get pretty good reactions. I mean, people kind of, luckily, I think there is a feeling in Poway that people like to think for themselves. Right. And so that's been great because it allows me that opportunity to say, okay, well, then let's talk. Like, share with me what's going on, what you're upset about. Let me tell you kind of what I think. And at least we can both leave the meeting knowing that we tried. And that's the biggest thing for me is let's, at least for this brief period during, while I'm an appointed council member, give me a chance.
Yeah.
Let's not, jump to conclusions or make assumptions.
Well, actually the timing is interesting because you were appointed in June, was it? So, roughly speaking, that's like 4, maybe 4.5 months that people are getting to really know you. And then in the end, the voters are going to choose anyways, right? Right.
And I completely respect people's feelings about the process. But at the end of the day, the ballot has been set and you have the options that you have to represent you for the next 2 years. So hopefully we can kind of start to move on from that and talk about, okay, who do we want representing us? What do we think is important? And who's really listening to us and what's resonating?
Yeah.
And that's just what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. You just got to go out, to your point, build relationships, right? Meet people, give them a chance to get to know you. And then people will judge how they choose, and then they'll show up at the ballot box, right?
Yeah. I would just love for people to be basing their opinions more on facts about me and what I'm doing and what I say versus what they think is going on or what they are upset about that was beyond my control. And really, outside the council followed the government code. They did what they decided to do. And I simply saw an opportunity to serve the city I live in. And that was really my motivation. Good for you.
Nothing wrong with that. Here's another interesting question. So when you go and you talk to your old friends from college, okay, or maybe you go back to your mom and you're new in Poway, and like, what are some of the things that you say, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe that Poway does this?
In a good way, it's Prop FF. That's one of the things that you don't see in most cities. I can't think of another city that has a similar process. And it's really fascinating because, especially having worked at the County Board of Supervisors, one of their biggest roles is making land use decisions. We saw a lot of those decisions this summer. And that, my boss would definitely say that's probably his number one job is making those decisions and planning the land use. And so the fact that duty is really put in the hands of voters when it comes to, upzoning these designated properties, it's really interesting because it ensures that the council can never really lose touch of what's important because they aren't the ones making those decisions. It's the voters. So even if you have a disagreement with someone on the council about maybe the future of Poway or what density should look like or things like that, at the very least, that there are all of these properties that are protected by that process.
Right.
And I think that that's a really powerful voice that it gives to Poway residents, because it means that those things have to really be thoroughly vetted. They aren't just going to go, before the council for a couple meetings and then happen.
Right.
I mean, we saw in 2018, kind of that process where they probably went wrong and didn't really involve the community in the right way, or weren't really upfront and honest about it. And so that, who knows how that would have gone if that project was something that had to go before a council instead. I mean, I can't say what that would have looked like, but I think it really adds an interesting element to the future of Poway and where we go, because it means that there's certain things about us that will never change, because the people of Poway value their open space. They value continuing to maintain that city and the country vibe. And the proposition allows us to do that. And it doesn't mean that you can get a bunch of change all at once that really doesn't fit with the city. Right. So I think it's a really interesting and it was a very far-reaching and forward-thinking idea to have implemented that. Yeah. I mean, you look at our founders, like Bruce Tarzi and Bob Emery, these gentlemen, when they started the city, they had something in mind. But they basically wanted to sort of implant the DNA, right? Right. To kind of create this species of a city. That and
would
get away from what the county was thinking, and really, because I think that Poway was becoming more and more of its own unique community, and not necessarily just an unincorporated area of the county. And so to incorporate the way they did and really say, this is what's important to us here, and we want to make sure that that's valued and that's protected and that it continues. I just think that's a really unique history for our city to have that. Yeah, it is. It's very special. And, in a lot of ways, it sort of, ties our hands on things, but many would say for good reasons, right? Right, right. I think so, because it really is harder for outside interests to have that influence, because to get, a whole city on your side is a big undertaking. And to bring forward a project that's going to be successful, it has to reflect the community. It has to respect the city and its character, where we've come from, while still really offering something that's going to benefit the city. Yeah. And that's a huge thing too, is they don't just get to come in and say, well, we want to make money, so we're going to, build it. There has to be community benefits associated with it. And so that's one of the things that I think sometimes people don't always know that that's a part of the process, is what are you going to offer trails or public access or community benefits beyond, commercial type benefits, or even beyond just housing. Right. For the most part, other things come along with it that benefit the city as a whole, and not just the people that live there. Well, it's like the open plaza idea that we talked about, right? Right. Where you don't have to go and be, a patron of the businesses to enjoy the atmosphere. Right. And that's, I think, a really nice element of that it does become this public benefit and this public resource, and not just a place to shop or eat or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it is a special part of the city. I agree with you. I like that. Yeah. What else have we not covered that you think is important for me to know about you, or voters to know about you, that we haven't talked about? I don't know. This has been we've covered a lot. Yeah, we have. We've touched on a lot. I enjoy this. We've touched on a lot of topics. Well, I asked you my Padres question for my husband. Does your Padre not like Andy Green? I think he's concerned about, are we really making progress? Is it really, does he really have the plan in place, or is it just, excuses kind of thing? But I think if you're looking at it from what your perspective is that like it's a much slower, we really were starting down here and building up, that makes a little more sense. Here's a nugget you can share with him. Okay. Andy Green finally got through to Hunter Renfroe to not chase balls out of the zone. And he's a lot more selective. I don't even know what that means. He's a lot more selective, and he's had great results these last couple of months. Does that mean by chasing balls, you mean swinging at pitches? He was swinging at balls that weren't strikes. Okay. And he was flailing and swinging and missing. Instead of just waiting. And now he's very selective. He goes, I don't want that pitch. Oh.
Because he used to be just, a slugger. I'm going to hit everything out of the park.
Okay.
And now he's more selective, and he takes walks. And he's still productive with a walk. But then when that ball is where he wants it, he rips it. And he's been terrific the last 2.5 months.
Okay.
But Andy Green has been hammering him for over a year to switch his approach.
And it took it that long.
Yeah, and he wouldn't listen. And now he finally listened.
Okay.
So,
That's a solid example.
Yeah.
I think he likes Andy Green. I don't think it's an issue of, that he's not good at what he does or anything like that. I think you just want to know it's going to happen.
Yeah, well, people are frustrated. I always joke about the San Diego sports curse. I mean, we don't win anything here.
I know. That's why I need to find. I mean, it's just as well that they left, because I need to find a team that's going to win.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
And hopefully not a bandwagon team, like a team that you're loyal to and you stick with, and they're going to win.
And then they do it.
But it's just, we just keep getting, knocked down. And so I'm hopeful that the Padres have done the right thing since they hired Preller. Because they made they spent huge money on the last year where there was unlimited spending on the international draft. And so that's how they restocked their farm.
Okay.
They went out and, essentially, bought these players from the Dominican Republic and from Venezuela. So we're hopeful. I know I'm going off on a tangent. Sorry.
No, he'll appreciate it.
Yeah. So what else do we need to know about you?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty friendly. So honestly, I mean, I would love for people, if you see me out and about, come and say hi. Let's talk.
What grocery store do you go to?
I like the Stater Brothers on Poway Road.
Okay.
In
the Creekside Plaza one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So right by the movie theater.
Yes. So I go to that grocery store. We go to Brewski's. We go to the Hamburger Factory. We go to Old Poway Park pretty regularly.
What's your favorite Starbucks? Maybe we'll see you at a Starbucks.
Well, I always go to the one. It's right on the edge of Poway, the drive-through one on Palmerado and Scripps Poway Parkway, because that's on my way to work.
Okay.
But I also love the Coffee Bean.
Okay.
King's Craft is also really good, which is kind of on the other side of town. But
so these are the places we might run into you.
Yeah, I mean, and it's. I would even just send me a text or shoot me a Facebook message or anything. I'd love to meet more moms. And kind of build my mom village.
Oh yeah, you'll need that.
You'll definitely see me at story hour at the library and things like that. And just really we're becoming a part of the community, and I'm looking into joining I went to the Seroptimus.
Oh, good.
Club,
that's a good group.
Which fantastic women, fantastic mission.
Super group.
I've worked a little bit with the Seroptimus of Vista, I believe, which is a pretty big kind of well-run group, and they peripherally had some interaction with our office and some grant funding and some projects they were partnering with. And I always thought, how fantastic to be a part of women serving women.
Yeah, that's huge.
I was in a sorority in college as well. And so there are a lot of elements of Seroptimus that they have some Greek roots and the sisterhood and, that it is all women and that their primary mission is helping other women. I'm really excited about that because I left the meeting feeling really inspired and kind of hopeful that this might be a group that will really kind of fill that part of my life that's been lacking as far as having that philanthropy.
Yeah, that's important.
And those service opportunities. And so that I'm really excited about that. We love the farmer's market. Always really good. Love crepes. And Mission Cellars. Have you been there?
No.
It's like the wine bar in Old Poway Village.
No, I haven't visited that.
Really good. We've gone there a couple times. It's nice. You can kind of take the baby and do a walk around Old Poway Park and spend a little time there, and then go over and have a glass of wine.
All right, I like that.
So we're just kind of we're pretty normal family. We do have, because we have a young baby, we're not out at night that much.
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah, obviously.
But that's why I'd love to, we're trying to make a Poway High football game, and because my husband loves even, high school football, and I'm sure when our kids are in sports, he'll want to coach and be a part of that. So we're just all over the place. I have a friend that their son plays in the flag football league that plays at Meadowbrook on Friday nights. It's like literally like mini Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, excellent.
So we went and watched some of their games and super fun. Like the kids just running around and all the parents hanging out. So we're all over the place. And please, if you see me, say hi.
Yeah.
If you want to grab a cup of coffee, I always say, I have my baby, so I'll be drinking coffee anyways. You might as well drink it with me.
Right.
And yeah, I'm really loving being here, and that's me.
Well, I've enjoyed this discussion.
Thank you.
I think I've really gotten a chance to know you, and you're my representative, right? You're an right now.
Yeah, the whole city.
The whole city.
The whole city.
And if you're fortunate enough to be reelected, you'll still be my representative.
I will for at least another 2 years.
Yeah, that's right. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Caylin Frank, our sitting Poway councilperson running for reelection in about 4.5 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's coming up soon. It's coming. So I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And welcome to Poway.
Thank you so much.
All right.